Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Reaction Show. My name is Andrew Velez. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Joel Dells. We are here after Thursday Night Football, a rare good game between the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints. Before we get into that game, Mr. Dells, the semifinals for a majority of people are here. However, for you, we're talking about a finals matchup that I unfortunately will not be participating in. Talk to me. How are you feeling outside of fantasy football? How are you doing? Talk to me, Mr. Dallas. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good. I was in the city today. Chelsea and I went out a little city
Yup.
date. We went to this place. It was mad bougie. It was kind of like rooftop, but inside it was like a nice skyline. But in terms of fantasy, because I already told that we were out to eat tonight. We didn't have anyone, me or my opponent G. We didn't have anyone playing tonight. But I told her, I was like, listen, the next 2 weeks are gonna be the most stressful 2 weeks of the year. Like from December 21st to whatever January 5th. Just know, like I'm gonna be on edge this whole time because the fantasy championship. Um, but other than that, man, I'm feeling good about my matchup. I am upset Keenan Allen's going to miss a second straight week. At this point, it feels like why don't just shut him down?
He's
They're
done.
not playing
Yep.
well. It feels like he's not going to come back. But then I felt pretty confident. Oddly enough, we've been shitting on him basically the whole year. And Calvin Ridley going up against Tampa Bay, a really good matchup.
Great
And
matchup
now
for
Trevor
sure.
Lawrence is likely going to miss the game. He's dealing with a concussion. So now I'm like, shit, I'm probably going to start Jerome Ford, which not the end of the world, but I don't know if I'm ecstatic about. He's been kind of lackluster. They've been throwing the ball a ton with Joe Flacco. But listen, this team got here. I got some really good
Miracle.
matchups week 17. Week
Facts.
16, I do have a couple tougher matchups, but I feel like both of our teams are pretty even. We both have some easy matchups, both have some hard matchups. Also going up against Chuck. Shout out to Chuck in Dynasty right now. We just went back and forth. I had Puka
Oh,
who dropped
yeah.
30. He had Olave who dropped 20. So he's keeping it there too.
I'll say this. It hurts watching from the sidelines, understanding that my team, just on paper, even though that really doesn't matter, it clears the
Yeah,
both of
squad.
yours. It's
Yeah,
better. It's a better team. It's
yeah.
just that's why fantasy football
That's
is
why
a
that's why you
one-on-one
play the
game.
game, man.
Sometimes even having the better team, it's not going to do it for you. It's a week-to-week thing, and that's why matchups are so key, so essential to bringing home that Lombardi at the end of the season. But before we get into our unique show, we're not going to do our usual starts of the week on a Thursday night. We tweeted this out. We put it up on Instagram, even put it in our Discord. If you guys aren't in the Discord, go ahead and join. It's going to be in the link below. Only $1 to join the Discord. You get an extra episode, and you get to have extra questions so that when we have conversations on the show, you can be included in that. So we're going to be doing our mailbag a little bit later. But before we get into the mailbag questions, let's talk about this Thursday night football game. Let's talk about the opening of the semifinals for a majority of the viewers watching. We watched the Saints versus Rams. The Rams came away with the W 30-22. The Rams had a late punt blocked that ended up making this a little bit closer than what it should have been. We saw A.T. Perry. Shout out to A.T. Perry. He rookie guy goes and gets into the end zone once again, but to make this a little bit closer. But just looking at just the grand scheme of things, Puka Nakua has to be the star of today's matchup. He goes for 164 and a touchdown, 9 catches on 11 targets. Riv made a hot take a couple weeks ago saying Puka Nakua is better than Cooper Kupp. Now, where I don't know if I still would necessarily agree with that statement, I mean, Puka Nakua is doing a great job of trying to make Riv seem like he is correct in this regard. I look at the last 2 weeks, saw Cooper Kupp get back to his, but you know the attention that Cooper Kupp's going to draw and open up the field for the rest of his guys. It just helps that Puka Nakua is just a great a future elite talent in this league. He is on pace to be up there with the greats in terms of rookie seasons for yards in a season. He has been phenomenal all year long. And Cooper Kupp, speaking about him, if you're in PPR leagues, you weren't too upset. Did get you double-digit fantasy points, 10.9, 6 catches on 12 targets, 52 yards. But Demarcus Robinson, we spoke about it last week on our waiver wire section. Was he worth a pickup in deeper leagues? I felt it was imperative. You have to add this guy. Another week, 4 straight weeks in a row of double-digit fantasy points. This week, 20.2, 82 yards, 6 targets, brings in all 6 catches and a touchdown. The Rams offense is one that I want all parts of, because then the running back, Kyron Williams, who's going to be most likely a top 5 finish at the end of the season, he goes for over 100, 104, 22 carries, almost 5 a carry, and a touchdown himself. This Rams offense is reminiscent of that of 2 years ago, except now they have a healthy, more reliable number 2 option. I say that with due respect to Odell, where he came along for a later part of the season. And Van Jefferson, for a good portion of that season, was their wide receiver too. To me, this offense is better than it was 2 years ago. Puka Nacua is amazing. Cooper Kupp, where he's not that same dominant force, he's still a wide receiver 1. Kyron Williams is I don't want to elite. I don't want to throw it away too loosely, but damn, he might be elite at this point in time with the way that he can rush the football. He's obviously a solid pass catcher in his own right. Didn't get involved in the pass today, but obviously he's an efficient rusher himself. I'm looking at this Rams offense, and not just for real life, because in real life, you got to trust Matthew Stafford so long as he's healthy. But for fantasy football, if you have any of these guys in the semifinals, or God willing, if you guys make it through to the finals, you got to be feeling comfortable about the position that you're in.
Puka needs to average 63 yards over the next 2 weeks to break the rookie receiving record. It's pretty crazy how, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, you see what they did their rookie year. Now they're 2 of the best receivers in the league. Puka is on that same sort of trajectory, even though you don't see the same type of physical skills from him. It doesn't matter. He's just, especially in that offense, the amount of volume he's going to get, and he's talented in his own right. He has the speed, even though he didn't have the fastest 40, he has the game speed to be able to rip off 50, 60-yard touchdowns. He has great hands. He can make catches in traffic. Matthew Stafford now has 5 straight games of 2+ passing touchdowns, 300 yards. Yet again, he's done that multiple times over this, 5-game streak where the offense has really taken off. And it feels a little, if you have a Cooper Kupp, you feel a little bit cheated because you see Puka go out and have the huge game. You see DeMarcus Robinson, who, shout out to him, because you were trying to tell me, like, pick him up. And I was like, I don't believe it. And then I saw this week that Tutu Atwell was playing. I'm like, now I definitely don't believe it. I think DeMarcus Robinson is probably, not even worth picking up. He goes out there 82 yards and a touchdown. Seems to have a connection with Matt Stafford. He had that nice play where Stafford rolls out to the left. They lock eyes. He runs down the sideline on the left-hand side. He gets a big play there. So they seem really connected. But if you're talking about the Saints, Alvin Kamara has his worst game of the season. 35 total yards, 9 rushing attempts for 19 yards, 5 receptions, only go for 16 yards. It was a really tough game for him. The Rams defense, especially against the run, has been phenomenal lately. One of the best in the league, top 5 in the last month or so. And he had really nowhere to go. I mean, the Saints in total had 35 yards on the ground. Didn't matter if Jamal Williams was out there. Taysom Hill got a carry or 2. None of them were able to move the ball. Derek Carr finishes with a good statistical day, 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you would have told me that, I wouldn't have believed you. Didn't feel like it was a 300-yard, 3-touchdown game. You saw Olave go out, have a career, or not career, but a season high 123 yards on 9 receptions. So if you had Olave, that was a really solid start. But overall, you're right. If you have Rams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, I did see some pieces out there from different fantasy sources that were a bit lower on Puka this week. I was a bit surprised because I was thinking about it in Dynasty about sitting him, because I had Aaron Jones playing Carolina. I have Breece Hall playing Washington, who I don't know if I'm going to start. We're going to talk about Breece Hall a ton when we get to the mailbag, because there's like 4 Breece Hall questions. But I was just like, this offense has been so lethal lately. Matthew Stafford at home. I don't care that's a Thursday night game. This offense is just too damn good. We saw last week Cooper Kupp. He really just had that big 60-yard touchdown. That's why he had the huge game. Today, Puka Nacua has more than just one big touchdown. He goes for 160 yards and basically triples Kupp's production.
So really, I just don't see a world where Puka Nacua, with only needing to average 63 the next 2 weeks, this record's seemingly his. And the way that we know Matthew Stafford, he just likes to make history with his wide receivers. Just add Puka Nacua to that list. I just feel like it's inevitable. We're going to see it happen. And this was a week that I was not expecting 164 out of him. I anticipated a good week. We've seen it that the Saints these last couple of weeks have been a little forgiving to wide receiver twos. We understand that a majority of attention is going to go to Cooper regardless, but you cannot forget about Puka. It's been evident all season long, and he dominated in today's matchup. Talking about the Saints real quick, Of course, you got to love Olave. If you have him in fantasy football, I know you talked about facing him in Dynasty. I'm sure that was tough to see, but you had Puka. It kind of eased the blow a little bit, but you got to know when Olave's on the field, he's going to get his. He's just too special of a talent, too fast, too sharp, great hands. He's going to get his. And they had an opportunity that just Derek Carr and him weren't on the same page, that Olave was ready to go for the touchdown. Just one of those that he just should have sat down and just got the first down. That could have been a big play that added to his day. But all in all, you still can't be upset. 123, 9 catches, 13 targets. Just the sheer volume that he's going to get in this offense. These next 2 weeks, if you have Olave, and next week with Olave, he is going up against Tampa Bay, who you mentioned you like the matchup with I'm blinking. You said
Ridley.
early on who say that one more time.
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley, absolutely. And with Chris Olave, we understand that he's definitely safer than that of a Calvin Ridley. So to me, I'm looking at Olave next 2 weeks. Definitely those that if you have him in your lineup, you're looking sweet for the upcoming either your semifinal matchup today or your finals matchup, God willing, next week. But again, other than that, Rashid Shaheed gets his bomb touchdown that you know that he's likely to do from time to time. He's a big play guy. If they can get him on a little bit more consistent basis, maybe he becomes a little bit more intriguing to me. I'm sure if you guys are in dynasty leagues, you should have Rashid Shaheed rostered. 5 catches, 9 targets, which is very good to see. 70 yards. A lot of that did come on that big touchdown. But outside of that, nothing really that catches the eye. You mentioned Kamara. Jamal Williams got a little bit of action, 3 touches. I mean, this offense really was lackluster. The Rams really had full control of this game pretty much throughout. They were able to ice the game at the end right there. But this game really just more so is speaking more to me about the Rams. Now they go to 8-7. We're talking about a team that is looking to make that last or one of the spots in the wild card. And I'll be real. If I'm a team in the playoffs and I'm a 2, 3, 4 seed, I don't want to face the Los Angeles Rams. They have the playoff experience. They have an explosive offense in terms of passing and rushing. To me, the Rams are not a team I want to face, especially if you're a slumping Eagles or a Dallas team that can get gashed in the run. And when you're facing a Kyron Williams who can obviously beat you up in that regard, the Rams could make it a tough matchup on anyone. And the Niners, I think it would be a tougher game. Of course, it is a division game. Anything can happen there. I just think off sheer respect, you have to go with the Niners with the way that they've been playing football, the way that they can get pressure on Matthew Stafford as well. You lean the Niners there, but really the Lions, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Rams will make it a tough game on any of those teams. And with the way that they're playing football, I don't want to face them if I'm those guys.
Yeah, it's the Rams still have San Francisco on their schedule week 18. So depending on is San Francisco playing for anything, because they have wins over the Eagles, they have wins over the Cowboys, so they're gonna have the tiebreaker. So they probably that week 18, there's a chance they could sit their guys, because if the Rams are able to win their last 2, finish 10-7, that probably gives you the 5 or 6 seed. Assuming they have the tiebreakers, winning NFC games and division games too. That means they're most likely going to be going up against Detroit, possibly the NFC South winner, whoever that ends up being too. Buccaneers, Saints. I guess really all of them have a chance outside of Carolina. But I agree with you. They feel like maybe the ceiling isn't quite the same, but very much how the Bills feel in the AFC, where they're a team that was kind of slumping midseason. They're going on
Yep.
this run. The offense is intact. The quarterback is playing at a top level, and the defense is able to do enough. We see the Rams defense, as I mentioned, one of the best run defenses in the last few weeks. And you have a Bills team who is dealing with some injuries. We just saw Jordan Phillips get put on IR. That's going to be a big blow. But just shut down this Cowboys offense that looked unstoppable. Looked like the
Yep.
best offense in football, number 1 scoring offense. Dak was in MVP talk. CeeDee Lamb's having a career year, and they shut them down. Regardless of the home away splits, you got to give them their credit there. But 2 offenses that are really potent right now, and getting hot at the right time.
Shout out to our guy Jamie making the strong move of going with Stafford over Kyler and acknowledging the real Matty Ice. Jamie,
Yes.
I always knew you knew ball, but damn it, this just put that nail in that coffin. You know ball, my guy.
Would you have
But
started real quick? Would you have started Stafford over Lamar? Lamar has San Francisco. I didn't think about it, but once I saw Stafford have like 22 or 24, I'm like, maybe I should have thought about that.
Interesting. You know what? You know that Lamar Jackson, when it comes to the regular season, he plays up to the level of competition that he is facing. Niners is a tough matchup. They're going to get pressure on him. But like we said on the last show when you and I sat down, name somebody better in the pocket and evading pressure like that. You have Mahomes, and I'm putting Lamar right there with him. He's that elite level of evading pressure. He's obviously going to make the smart reads. He's obviously going to get his looks with in terms of rushing ability. I think regardless, his floor is always going to be safe. And you go with your big guy in that situation. Lamar, tough matchup versus the Niners. Stafford has been pretty great, but Lamar is one of the reasons that you're in the position that you are right now. I think I'm fine with you riding with Lamar, but either which way, I don't think you could have gone wrong.
All right, so you want to answer this super chat first.
Let's do it.
We'll else's comments too. We also have comments from Twitter, from Instagram. But yeah, we could read the super chat real quick and then get into all the questions.
All right, sweet. So now we're going to get into the mailbag section of the show. Before we do that, leave a like on this video. It helps us out a lot. We really appreciate it for those that are tuned in. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, come on, what are you doing? Subscribe to the channel. Turn on that notification bell so you know when we go live like tonight. We're going to be going live for our next upcoming podcast. You know, whenever Joel Moran's going live, whenever Riv Academy, if and when that ever drops ever again. Of course, you always get notified when that's going to happen. But let's get into the mailbag section of the show. This episode strictly for answering your guys' questions. We're going to change it up from what we normally do. So the first one goes in from Big Chief. Appreciate the donation, King. Says, appreciate these lives. I've been doing well in my 3 playoffs I'm in. We'd love to see that. Always much love for you guys. Do you go with Fields or Lawrence? Now, Dells, it's not looking great for Lawrence. Another day without practicing. We're going to go over our injuries at the end of the show like we normally do on these Thursdays, but no practice again. With the concussion, it's looking as if Trevor will not play this weekend. So I feel like that's the answer right there. I feel like if Lawrence is playing, I
Fields
still
has
think
Arizona. I would
that
probably still be going
I
with
think so
Fields.
too. I think so too. I mean, when it comes to bad matchups, especially in fantasy football, Justin Fields is one of the better plays, and Arizona's defense is not good. So I would be going with Justin Fields, but you're definitely in a situation where you're gonna see Lawrence probably get ruled out, if I had to say so, early on in the week. Now, we did put up the poll on Twitter to ask you guys if you guys had any questions. So we're going to be going over our Twitter questions. We're going to be going over our IG questions. Of course, after we get through all that, we'll get to your guys' questions that are in the YouTube comments right now. No doubt about it. John was funny. He asked us to rank the 2020 quarterbacks this week, just in general, just 2020 quarterbacks, because he knows that he's mad about that Tannehill point. But the first one says KW. I hope he started Kyron Williams, Jalen Warren, or Ty Chandler at RB2 this week. Madison's
Or is that
questionable.
Kenneth
I mean,
Walker? KW Kenneth Walker, possibly.
facts. Either which way,
Probably.
Kyron
Yeah.
Williams, Kenny Walker makes sense too. Uh, Kenny Walker going up against Tennessee, Jalen Warren going up against Cincinnati, but we've seen Jalen Warren not be as effective these last couple of weeks since they did fire Matt Canada, weirdly enough, and Ty Chandler going up against Detroit. That honestly is not as bad of a matchup as it looks like. I think Kenny Walker might be the play after last week versus Philadelphia. He had himself a great, like the first great game he's had in some time. I feel like I would lean Kenny Walker in this situation, especially because Philadelphia was a great rush defense and he did his thing against them. In Tennessee, they haven't been the same rush defense that we've seen in years past. And I think that they got to ride the hot hand, especially if there's going to be that conversation up in the air, whether it's going to be Geno, whether it's going to be Drew Lock. I'm going to assume that it's going to be Geno Smith this week, even though Drew did come away with the W against Philly. But I think Kenny Walker would be the safer play of the 3.
Yeah, assuming that this is Kenneth Walker, not Kyron Williams. I hope you started Kyron if that's the case. It's
No
between
doubt.
Kenneth Walker and Ty Chandler for me. Jalen Warren has kind of fallen out of that must-start situation, but I would lean Kenneth Walker too. Ty Chandler, the workload he saw last week, 23 carries, is promising. Like, I think Ty Chandler is probably like top 15 type running back this week, even against the Detroit matchup that hasn't been that great. But we just saw Tennessee a couple weeks ago give up 100 plus yards to Chuba Hubbard. So this rush defense, like you mentioned, it's been dominant in years past. But this year, especially over the last month or so, they've been a lot more forgiving, Kenneth Walker looked great against Philly, whose rush defense has been pretty damn good all season long. And the fact that he looked healthy is more important than anything. He looked healthy. He got the carry, still didn't play a ton of snaps, was around that like 60 percentile. But that's where he's going to live. Charbonnet is going to get on the field, but Kenneth Walker looks so explosive. I would just ride with him.
The next one comes from our guy, your boy Nick. He says, this is for the playoffs. Who do I start? Goff versus Fields. Now, Goff going up against Minnesota, and Fields, like we mentioned, going up against Arizona. To be honest with you, I still lean Fields. I think that Arizona defense is really bad. Goff did have himself a baller game against my Denver Broncos, but I still think regardless, Justin Fields is just a safer play and could be a little bit more explosive than a Goff. Next one's going to be Swift versus the Giants, or Breece Hall versus the Commanders. Now, you mentioned it. This was the question of the week. And I think that you yourself have been asking yourself this question. I thought you overthought it, to be honest with you. Breece Hall against the Texans was dominant. Last week was not against Miami. The game got away from them. But in this matchup versus the Commanders, the worst defense in football, whether it's running the football, whether it's passing the football, offenses have had a ton of success against this defense. I think Breece is a safe play this week. I think he's safer than a DeAndre Swift, believe it or not. The Giants, obviously, not a bad matchup for fantasy players, no doubt. But Breece Hall going up against the worst defense in football. I'm going to take that chance on Breece because of the receiving upside that he does have.
I think Breece is a strong start. I just have two other really strong starts, in my opinion, Jonathan Taylor and Isaiah Pacheco. It feels like the floor with Breece Hall, that's what scares me the most. Because the floor with Breece Hall is nothing. It's like 3 or 4 points. They have Trevor Siemian out there. They can't move the ball, even though it's against the Commanders. They're able to get a pass rush on this offensive line that's on fourth stringers and practice squad guys. That's the scare with Breece Hall, because the upside is tremendous. You're going up against a 32nd ranked defense, but you're also the 32nd ranked offense. And now you're on a worse quarterback. I thought Siemian might be better than Zach. I don't think Siemian is better than Zach. And Zach was able to consistently, not this Miami game, but before that, he saw Breece Hall a ton in the passing department. We saw that a lot from Tim Boyle too. What's going to look like with Trevor Siemian? Breece Hall, I still think, is going to get work in the receiving game. So he should be looked at as like a really strong start this week. But if you do have some other players who are kind of in that same realm, I might lean them just because of the floor. But in terms of DeAndre Swift and Breece Hall, I see a bit of a gap there. So I would be going Breece Hall.
Next question comes from Vikings 100799.
Your boy Nick also said Jacoby Myers or D-Hop. I'm going with D-Hop. Tannehill might be playing, which is a bit scary. But I think Tannehill is good enough to get DeAndre Hopkins involved. Jacoby Myers, they had a great game. They did have a great game, put up 60 points, but I can't rely on back-to-back games of 2 touchdowns from him.
And a reason why Jacoby also had himself a better fantasy day is because he also threw a touchdown. I don't know if we're going to be seeing that on a week-to-week basis. D-Hop definitely is a safer play. Appreciate you helping me out on that one, Mr. Dowse. But the next one comes from Vikings 100799. Says Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, or James Conner need to start one. Now, James Conner going up against the Bears, you know how I feel about the Bears defense. I think that the Bears defense is a solid unit. I think that James Conner, with the amount of touches that he's just going to get, he's a safe play. But I think you take that chance on Aaron Jones versus the Carolina Panthers, one of the worst rush defenses in football. Aaron Jones has burned you guys all season long, and I understand that. But this matchup is too great for me. Personally, I would lean Jones, but would understand if you want to play it safe in the semifinals, the safer play to me would be a James Conner for the volume.
Yeah, I'm looking at the practice reports. AJ Dillon was limited. He was dealing with that broken thumb that sat him out of last game. The matchup's really good for Aaron Jones, so I would probably be leaning there. It does feel a bit more risky because it's been all season long with Aaron Jones. Right when you think he's back and he's healthy and he's got a good matchup, something goes left. And of course, having AJ Dillon there or not is going to have an impact in the amount of snaps he gets too. DeAndre Swift, we just talked about, it is a good matchup going up against the Giants. James Conner, not as good of a matchup going up against Chicago. I think I would still lean Aaron Jones here just because Carolina, although they shut down Bijan Robinson, I feel like that was Arthur Smith shutting down Bijan Robinson, not Carolina doing that.
Correct.
So I feel
Correct.
strong about Aaron Jones. The weather should be fine too. Remember that was a rain game. It was like pissing the entire game. It's supposed to be good weather
Yep.
in Carolina. So I trust that Green Bay offense being able to move the ball.
Next one comes from MXAXJSO says, which defense should I start? Chicago versus Arizona or the Steelers versus Cincinnati? To be honest, I don't love either of these, but if I had to
No.
pick one, I guess I would go with Chicago versus Arizona, only for the idea that I know Jake Browning last time they played up against the Steelers, Jake Browning did not look that good. But these last 3 weeks, Jake Browning's been very good, very consistent, playing very smart football. Kyler Murray's always due to get his, but we haven't seen him be the passer that we've known that he can be in the past. So to me, I feel like I would lean Chicago in this situation. I'd hope that maybe if you could, honestly, Washington versus the Jets, if you
I
had
was
that,
just going to ask you, would you pick up the 31st ranked defense in fantasy football and play them against the Jets?
it's funny because I had that opportunity in one of our leagues and I didn't take it because how bad the Commanders are. But I feel like in this one specific situation, it's intriguing to me. But Chicago's defense has been really good, although it did blow it versus the Browns last week, which that's just the Bears are going to Bears, unfortunately. But of the two, if I just had to give an answer, I would go with Chicago.
Yeah, I would also look Green Bay Packers playing Carolina this week. That's a decent matchup. Um, that's probably the only one. Of course, the Jets, great matchup. Broncos, they're probably already been picked up, but I don't love either of them. I
I
think
don't.
that's a situation where I would go and pick up the Commanders defense and say, you know what, Trevor Simeon, if you could do it, I'll tip my hat to you because I don't
I
like those
respect that.
matchups for the other two.
Next one's going to come from Day Stay Lit. Cool ass name. Says wide receiver 2 behind Debo. Rashid Rice, Jordan Addison, Gabe Davis, or T. Higgins. This
Okay,
is
Gabe Davis, no
probably
way.
the toughest question we've gotten. Gabe Davis is gone,
Yeah,
but Rashid Rice has been electric the last
unbelievable. Yeah.
4 to 5 weeks. Jordan Addison last week was a top 2 wide receiver in fantasy football. Going up against the Lions this week, who love giving up points to the wide receiver. With Jettas back in the lineup, you know Jordan Addison is going to get his. And then T. Higgins as the wide receiver 1 going up against the Steelers. It's not a bad play. I feel like it's obviously between Rashid, Jordan, and T. If I had to give an answer, I think I'm gonna go with Rashid Rice. I think
Mm.
Rashid Rice has just been a model of consistency, is going to get a ton of targets, has seen 8 to 10 targets these last 4 weeks consistently, has found himself in the end zone more often than not. To me, being Mahomes' wide receiver 1 means more to me than being Nick Mullins or Jake Browning's wide receiver 1. Me taking the easy way out, but Rashid has been a fantasy blessing if you've had him these last couple of weeks.
To me, it's between Rasheed and T. Higgins. Jordan Addison, I get it. He's coming off the huge game, 2 touchdowns, if I remember correctly. I just don't know if I could count on that again with Nick Mullins. Rashee Rice, you mentioned it. He's been targeted a ton. He's getting the end zone a ton. But I do think I would lean T. Higgins here. I think that the
I
upside with
understand.
T is a bit higher. I'm looking last year when Jamar Chase missed weeks 8 through 12. T. Higgins was wide receiver 24, 23, had the bye week, then wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 6, putting up 148 yards and 114 and a touchdown. Both are great starts. But I think T. Higgins has a bit higher upside.
I understand where you're coming from. Just 3 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. It's tough to say a guy like that. But this guy has a luxury. I mean, I think the 3 of them either which way are solid plays, but I get where you're coming from, no doubt about it. Next one comes from Mike the Goon W. We're getting some tough ad names. He says Trey McBride or Hawkinson this week. I'm sorry, I'm going with McBride. After what I saw
I don't
last
blame
week
you.
versus Fred Warner and the San Francisco 49ers, he's
Yeah,
matchup proof. He's matchup proof.
I
I'm
agree.
going with
I think
McBride.
McBride, I think I'm starting McBride over every tight end. Like, I don't know if there's like Sam Laporta, maybe even Kelsey. I don't know. Like, Trey McBride has looked so great. He's so involved in this offense. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. He's just been so damn good. Hollywood Brown, who knows if he plays or not? I really don't think it matters as long as Kyler Murray's out there going up against Chicago. They'll be able to move the ball. So Hawkinson, is there some way you could get him into your flex? Don't forget you could obviously put him there too, because I would
True.
still love to start him. I think he's still a strong start, but McBride's been on another level.
Now, I'm only reading this one because I'm praying to God that he did not sit either of these two guys. But sweet underscore bebe underscore J says start any of the following players over Chris Olave or Puka Nakua and half point PPR. Ty
Okay.
Chandler, Tyler Boyd, Devin Singletary. I'm praying that he did not sit those two guys because then he's going to be punching himself. Let's move on to our Instagram questions and we'll get on to your YouTube questions.
We got a
I see
super chat. We
sports
want to
do.
run this real quick.
Thank you for keeping me diligent with these
We're
super
here. We're
chats,
here.
sir. Shout out to our brother Kilmoo. Says, "What's up, fellas? My Dynasty League friends talking shit to me because I finished first in my league, but seventh in scoring. That sounds like a them problem. So do I still have
Sounds like
bragging
me.
rights? Also, I'm in semifinals. 1000% them problem. You don't control the schedule. You just go out there and you play your matchup week to week. I've definitely been on the opposite side of that where I've been one of the best teams in the league. I've had one of the best points. Funny story. Let's shed some light on this. I went 9-1 in our league.
Here we go.
I had the most points by far. By far, my average points per week was like 150.
He tells the
I went
story
nine
once a
and
month.
one. It still hurts me to this day. The other guy in our league went undefeated 10-0. The kicker, we did not play once all season long. And he gets his money back because he was undefeated. Now, mind you, if we matched up every single week, I was this bitter. I was this hurt. I would still have the same 9-1 record, and that one loss would be that one loss that I had the season regardless. Ironically,
Fucked
that
up.
was against Big Chuck. Do you know how much that hurts me?
It
That
is fucked
team
up.
was insanely good. And I touched no money that year. It hurt me to my core. I was so sad. But again, that's the game. And
It's
that's why
fantasy.
you do have bragging rights. Because end of the day, if you win, who
Yeah,
cares?
you got to
Who
win though.
cares?
You get bounced in the second round, the semifinals. They're sitting there, and in one of our dynasty leagues, I had the second fewest points and finished as the 4 seed, the 3 seed. I don't know how the fuck I did it. I wasn't up here bragging because my team was kind of shit, but I was like, I'm the 4 seed. I'm going to be in the playoffs. I have a chance. Got eliminated in the first round, so I can't really talk shit, unfortunately.
That's a fact. But let's get into these Instagram questions. I love when you guys ask us defense questions because that's not something that we cover on our starts of the week. But of course, defenses matter. Who are you starting? Broncos defense or Eagles defense? Kyler Murray or Nick Mullins? Now, Broncos defense versus the Patriots. I think I'm leaning that direction. Eagles
I'm
versus
in.
the Giants. I'm just not, I don't feel comfortable starting the Eagles defense. Broncos defense, although they laid a dud versus the Lions, Patriots are still one of the worst offense, if not the worst offense in football. That's easy to me. And then Nick Mullins or Kyler Murray.
I'm going K1. I know the matchup might not be as enticing. You got Mullins going up against Detroit, who defense has been
Yeah.
terrible for a couple months now. They started off a bit hotter and then cooled off, but I'm going with K1. This Bears defense has improved, but we just saw Joe Flacco more or less move the ball with ease. Over 300 yards. So I'm trusting Kyler there. Kyler's also coming off the highest rushing yard total of the season too.
I think I'm going to play contrarian here. I think I'm going to go Nick Mullins. Threw for over 300 yards against Cincinnati, had 2 touchdowns, did turn the ball over twice as well. But this Lions defense is one that you can beat. And with Jettas, with Jordan Addison, with Hawkinson, Ty Chandler obviously is a part of that offense too. I think that Nick Mullins is a safer play this week. If you started K1, no one's going to say otherwise. Obviously, Joel's here backing that. But I think Nick Mullins and that matchup versus the Lions just intrigues me a little bit more. It is a dangerous play. This is a high upside play. But that's kind of how I'm playing it. In a league that I have, actually, I have the choice between Nick Mullins or a Russell Wilson who's going up against the New England Patriots, one of the better defenses in the league. I'm going with Nick Mullins. And it's crazy because Russ has gotten me to this point, but you got to play the matchups. That's what I try to pride myself on. And I think Nick Mullins has one of the better matchups this week. And if we were doing start of the weeks, my hot take start of the week, Nick Mullins would be that guy, honestly.
Okay. I respect it.
Next one was Kyron Williams or Raheem Mostert. Either which way, these are two dogs. I
Like both.
probably would have leaned Kyron before the week, but Mostert has 20 touchdowns. So either which way, you weren't going to be upset about it. Next one, Jamie from NY. I wonder if that's Jamie, our Jamie.
There's Jimmy.
Says Pollard or James Conner for my RB2. James Cook is RB1, and I'm up against Kyron. Not great. Not great.
So you got Dallas this week, big matchup against Miami.
Miami.
James Conner, we talked about it, bit going up against Chicago. Tony Pollard did mention how much healthier he feels now. He said like the difference is night and day from earlier in the season. I forgot what exactly his injury was, but I saw that quote. And it's showing, he's been able to get in the end zone. He's looked better overall. I feel like in these last couple of weeks. Of course, Dallas has been dominating too, so that helps.
James next
really
one,
solid. Do you have an answer?
Are you still torn between this?
I'm still not sure.
I think I would lean James Conner again because of how safe his opportunity is. Where Pollard, it could be one of those where Miami is great at one thing, and that's really stopping the running backs in fantasy football. Now, Pollard has been showing to have some life in the passing game, which is what has been his bread and butter and his upbringing of being the running back one for the Dallas Cowboys. But again, I think James Conner and his opportunity going up against San Fran last week, he was still able to get his. I think going up against Chicago, who's been a solid rush defense, but in terms of success rate, hasn't been there recently. I still think that James Conner is the safer play, and I would lean James.
I think I'm leaning Tony Pollard. I think
he's the better player.
Matchup,
I get it.
Yeah, the offense. I know Miami's defense has been really solid lately, but this is going to be the first time in a while we've seen them go up against a top-notch offense. And I just trust Dallas to be able to move the ball. I think the Cardinals will too. Like I think Kyler's a good start. I think James Conner's a good start. But Tony Pollard I feel more confident in that offense overall, and just more points probably going to be scored in that game.
Shout out to Rudy. He says, what were the biggest busts of the fantasy season? Off the top of the head, Aaron Jones has to be one of them.
Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes definitely. Lawrence probably one of those as well.
Yeah. Let me bring up our draft board and see who is going in that first and second round.
The unfortunate one would be Nick Chubb. Of course, he got injured. You really can't call him a bust for that. That's the game, and unfortunately, he had one of the worst injuries that you're going to see on a football field. I think Mahomes is a great answer. Lawrence is definitely another one. Calvin Ridley's in conversation.
Austin
Eckler for sure. Eckler you probably nominate as your number one. Yeah, you see in the chat they're screaming Eckler.
Yeah. Eckler. I'm looking at the first two rounds though is pretty solid. Like you have Jettis who got hurt. You have Jamar Chase who's had bad quarterback play with and without Burrow. You have Burrow himself who got injured. Austin Eckler. Eckler's really the only one who he had an injury, to be fair. He did miss a few weeks, but he's the only one without any long-term injury who's just been disappointing.
Devontae Adams on and off. He feels like he's been a little inconsistent. Garrett Wilson. That's more unfortunate than anything.
Jalen Waddle's been disappointment. Deshaun Watson.
I think if I had to nominate, let's throw Mahomes for the quarterback. For the running back, let's throw Austin Eckler. For wide receiver, it's between Ridley. Waddle as of late has been getting it going. Tay too. I'm cool with Ridley just for the expectation that was.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Especially after week 1, too, where he goes crazy.
And then, for sure. And then tight end's Darren Waller. It's not even a conversation. It's Darren Waller.
Also, Kelsey kind of. Like, Kelsey was going in the first round. Kelsey was going in the first round in a lot of one quarterback leagues. And even in 2 quarterback leagues, he was still, around 2 or 3 pick. And he hasn't been the difference maker like he had. He's been really good. He's been a top 3 tight end this season. He's given you a lot of, consistent weeks. But when you're drafting him in the first round in leagues, you need him to have the 40, 50-point difference from tight end 1 to tight end 2, and he just hasn't been anywhere near that.
2 Kansas City Chiefs. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They got to be better, man. They're losing me. They never had me, but come on. Anthony underscore Soprano, excuse me. I didn't mean to disrespect you, legend. He said, have a combo of Aaron Jones, Brees Hall, and Gus Edwards at RB. Which two do I start?
Aaron Jones and
I think
Brees.
I think that's the easy answer. Aaron Jones and Brees Hall for sure. Gus Edwards a little wishy-washy for me. But again, any running back with Lamar Jackson, they're going to be okay. But Aaron Jones, Brees Hall just have great matchups. I would lean those two for sure. Uh, Rai Akita says, one RB, one wide receiver, one flex. Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, and Jaden Reed.
I think Saquon Barkley at running back.
Okay. I
Um,
don't
let
mind
me
that.
just let me pull up the question just
Amari
so I
Cooper
can know
versus
the guys.
Houston. I think Amari would be my receiver. Deontay versus Cincinnati would be intriguing as the flex. But how do you sit Josh Jacobs if he's playing? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know if he's going to play, but it's hard to sit Josh when he's been so great for fantasy football, of course.
How do you sit Saquon
But
too?
that's what I'm saying. It's seeming as if that Josh Jacobs may not play. So I would go Saquon at running back. I would go Amari at receiver and Deontay at flex, sitting Jacobs, sitting Eckler, and Reed's not a bad play. Last week, actually, I was torn between Deontay and Jaden Reed. Went with Jaden Reed. They actually finished with about the same fantasy score, so you can't go wrong with either of those guys. I just think Deontay going up against Cincinnati would be a little bit better matchup.
Mason Rudolph now though. That's Mitch Trubisky wasn't great, but Mason Rudolph is also equally as terrible, if
I
not
think
worse.
Mason gets the assignment. Get the ball to fucking Deontay Johnson. It can't be that difficult.
I hope so.
Next one's going to be from Matthew Poretsky. Says, if Pittman is out, do you guys think Drake London is a good replacement? If not, who at the flex? Yes.
Drake
Yes.
London,
Drake
yeah,
London going up against Indianapolis is the crib.
yes,
The issue
I'm there.
is Taylor Heineke is the quarterback. With Taylor Heineke and with Desmond Ritter, Drake London's two different guys. Desmond Ritter force feeds Drake with when the matchup's there. Taylor Heineke, we really didn't see that. I will say at the flex position, Drake is a good play, especially going up against Indianapolis.
Yeah, I don't love Heineke for Drake London, but this matchup is too good. Drake London is too talented. They're gonna have to score points. We know the Colts are gonna be able to put up points. Atlanta's gonna have to match that, and you would think Arthur Smith wants to prove something after the terrible game he had last week against Carolina.
We'll answer this super chat before we move on to any Instagram ones. Michael Drew, great last name, legend. He says, I literally cannot decide Purdy or Lamar Jackson. Who do I start for my fantasy championship? Mr. Dells, I'm going to leave this one to you. You're the Purdy guy. You're the Lamar guy. Talk to me.
This is tough. This is really tough. There's like so few quarterbacks I would be starting over Brock Purdy right now. He's just been unbelievable. He's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. He has a pretty safe floor, and the ceiling's insane. I think I trust Purdy. It's crazy, but
I respect
I
it. I
think that
respect
the
it.
offense is so like I believe that I think no matter what, San Francisco is going to be able to move the ball against Baltimore. We just saw the Rams be able to do it. The offenses are very similar, offensive philosophy. The playmakers are all healthy. And I still think Lamar's a great start. Like I would have him in my top 5 quarterbacks, but I would probably just have Purdy like one spot higher.
We got a couple more Instagram ones, and then we're going to get to your guys' YouTube questions. Quez asked us, oh, excuse me, let's go to this one first. DV underscore Drago says, should I start Pittman or Barkley if Pittman plays? If Pittman plays, I would play Pittman. He's been one of the safest plays in fantasy football. Even in a game that he unfortunately does not finish, he still ends up with double-digit fantasy points, continuing the streak of what is it, almost 8-9 weeks in a row of double-digit fantasy points.
It's been crazy.
I would go Pittman. He has a safer floor.
I'm with you, Pittman.
All right, Quez asks us, does Purdy still win MVP even if they happen to lose to the Ravens?
It depends. If Lamar outplays Purdy and he just goes out there 350 total yards, 3 touchdowns, gets the win, and then goes on and gets the 1 seed, I can see Lamar being favorite in that conversation. But barring Purdy just being terrible, I think a loss is okay as long as he has a decent game.
Last two. This one comes from Moose McConan. He says, Dak or Purdy this week? Dak going up
We just
against
have
Miami.
Emmanuel Brown in the comments asking the
Yeah,
same
I was
thing.
gonna
So
say
leave it at
that's
that.
why I also felt like this was a great question to ask. I feel like you got to stay confident in Purdy going up against Baltimore. Miami's defense did look vulnerable against Tennessee, so I can understand going with Dak in that situation. But again, I feel like the floor for Purdy is just like Joel has said every time he talks about Brock Purdy in fantasy football, 250, 2 touchdowns. That's what you're going to get out of Brock Purdy. That's his floor. So I
Yeah.
feel like you go with the safer play, especially when it comes to playoff fantasy football.
Yeah.
Last one's going to be from Checksmix_Jaden. He says, unstoppable force versus movable object. Cowboys aren't ideal. Do I pick up Jets or Washington defense? So he's talking about
I pick
Cowboys
up
versus Miami. Then Jets defense or Washington. That's easy. You go with the Jets defense versus
Yeah.
Washington. The Jets defense is simply one of the best units in football, and we've seen this Commanders offense struggle recently. So I would definitely go with the Jets there. Now, last part, we're going to get into your YouTube questions, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Again, we
We'll do
try to cater
injuries
this
too.
episode.
Don't forget about injuries.
Oh, no, and then we do have injuries. You're
We're there. We're
100%
there. We're
right.
there.
First question is going to come from Sports Dude. Shout out to a legend. He says Nick Mullins, or Jake Browning. Now, Joel, I'm going to exclude you from this question because this is Charles. So
Shout out Sports
I
Dude.
said it early on. I really like Nick Mullins going up against Detroit. Jake Browning's been playing some awesome football, and in a matchup versus Minnesota, a solid defense. Jake Browning started the game off slow, but ended amazingly, finished with over 20 fantasy points. Nick Mullins was the exact same way, and going up against Detroit, personally, I would lean Nick. Jake isn't a bad play, but if I had to choose, I'm taking Nick Mullins in this situation.
I'd also go Nick Mullins.
See, but that I don't know if you can trust your word.
I don't know. That's just what I'm saying. My humble opinion.
Devon Moore, he says Devin Singletary or Jerome Ford. They're going up against each other. I feel like I would lean Jerome Ford in this situation.
Yeah.
I think Devin Singletary going up against Cleveland defense is just not as good of a matchup as Jerome going up against the Texans defense that has not been that great over these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and you have Stroud potentially missing this game too. That means the offense is going to struggle even more. Ford, his carries have gone down recently. Like these last 4 weeks, he's had 3 games under 10 carries, but he's been getting targets: 7 targets, 3 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets. He's getting some work through the air, which is making him kind of serviceable. None of these guys are great starts, but give me Jerome in a better matchup.
Shout out to our guy, Space Age 713. He says, I have 2 spots, 4 players: McBride, Brees, Connor, and Zeke. Zeke going up against Detroit, not a bad matchup at all. Zeke going up against the Broncos. I apologize. Not a bad matchup at all. James Conner, again, I feel like he's safe. Brees going up against Washington. I'm going with Brees and I'm going with McBride. I love this matchup versus Washington. They're bad. They're not good. Brees should have himself a field day.
I agree. McBride, Brees.
Next one comes from Noe. He says, who do I start a receiver? Cooper, Ridley, or Metcalf? Interesting. Seattle going up against Tennessee. Good matchup for Metcalf.
I like that.
But Cooper going up against Houston, especially with the way that this guy, Joe Flacco, just slings the rock. And he gets it to his top guys. I think I would lean Cooper. Cooper or Metcalf between the two. None of these guys are bad plays. Joel mentioned it early on in the show with Tampa Bay. But again, I would lean Cooper in this situation for sheer volume, where Metcalf, we've seen JSN start to get involved a little bit. Of course, you can never forget about Tyler Lockett. I think that regardless, Cooper just has a little bit more ceiling to him right now.
I like Metcalf. I think Cooper's a solid start too. But DK these last couple of weeks, of course, you have that Dallas game where it goes crazy, and we're now back-to-back weeks of being in double-digit fantasy points. They're both good starts. Some tells me this week with DK going up against Tennessee, though, he's going to get a long touchdown.
Respect that. I understand where you're coming from. Definitely could see that happening. Jared Lieberman asks us, Jacoby Myers or Trey McBride PPR?
McBride.
Fire the fuck. Don't even ask this question. I don't want to see a question with Trey McBride anymore. You fire him the hell up. I made that mistake last week. We're not doing it again. He's bulletproof. He's a legend. I get emotional thinking about this. He's really like what he's came from is crazy. Let's see. Any more questions here? We'll ask this one just because I mean, either which way, not a great situation, Emmanuel. I'm sorry. Curtis Samuel versus the Jets or Nico Collins without no Stroud. I feel like with Jacoby's going to let it sling a little bit, but obviously they said Sam Howell is going to be the quarterback. Definitely happy for that. I didn't want to see my guy get benched. But against the Jets, not a
He's
great
probably gonna
matchup.
get benched. I'm not gonna lie. He's
Don't
probably
do
gonna get
that.
benched.
Don't do that. They're probably setting him up to get benched against the Jets. But I'm gonna go with Curtis. Am I? It's
I think
tough,
I'm going
man.
with Nico. I don't. Both of these are gross, but
Going up against
Nico
Cleveland's
is
tough.
just better, I think, and he's the number one. He should be at least. I don't feel good about either, but I would just take the chance with Nico.
William Mann asks us, in my Dynasty League semis, start Mike Evans versus Jacksonville, yes. Or Devonta Smith versus the Giants. I'm going with
Like,
Mike Evans. He's been phenomenal all season long. I'm definitely going to trust Mike in that situation. Although Smitty's been pretty good too recently, but Evans, again, going up against Jacksonville, that secondary is poo-poo. Rico asks us, should I start Boyd or Samuel? Had Keenan, but he's out for Saturday. Boyd or Samuel? I
This is
would
Curtis
lean
Samuel, I'm assuming.
Curtis Samuel, correct.
Yeah,
I think I would lean Boyd in this situation. Obviously, with no Jamar, or seeming as if no Jamar, he's trending in that direction, but hasn't officially been ruled out,
I
if I'm
think
not
Jamar's been ruled
mistaken.
out. No, he's been
Officially
ruled
ruled
out.
out.
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio, and they were saying how Zach Taylor was trying to hold out hope. But all right, if ruled out, then I think Boyd in this situation. Samuel going up against the Jets. I just don't trust a team going up against the Jets defense on a consistent basis
Yeah, I
if
would
they're
take
not the
Boyd too.
Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, that's a fact. I would take Boyd too.
Got him. I think that's gonna do it for questions. Um, let's move on to the injury section. If you guys have any comments, we will answer them right before we wrap up. Oh, wait, last one from Trevor. He says full PPR, Aaron Jones, James Conner, or David Montgomery got CMC as your RB1, and that's why you're in the playoffs, my friend. Good question. Detroit going up against Minnesota. David Montgomery seems to be a consistent option in that offense. Full PPR though.
I think I lean Aaron Jones
Is
to the full
I was gonna
PPR.
say, is Aaron Jones the play here?
Yeah. Even I feel like we've not taken James Conner every single question. He's just gonna have a crazy game because of it. But yeah,
Listen, I'm
David
in on
Montgomery
James
just
this week.
doesn't. Yeah, no, for sure. I think we've just been getting some better options. David
sure.
Montgomery, if this wasn't PPR, might lean that way. But Aaron Jones in the past game, like he could get 5 receptions pretty easily. In that
Apparently he's saying to pick 2.
Pick 2. Okay. I would have Aaron Jones in.
And you're going
James
Monty?
Conner, David Montgomery. Yeah. Fuck.
No slight to you, James. You're a great ball player. David Montgomery's just been a little bit better than you this year, and that's nothing to be upset about.
I don't know who I would go with.
This is tough. James Conner's
really hasn't
safe.
been getting a lot of receiving work. He
He
last
hasn't.
2 weeks, he's had what the fuck? He's had but since he's come back from injury, 0 catches, 2 catches for 1 yard, 4 catches for 5 yards, 0 catches, 3 catches for 3 yards.
Yuck.
That's disgusting. Give me David Montgomery.
That's not good. All right. I'm fine with that. All right, let's get on to injuries, and then we can get out of here.
All right, so 3 players who have been ruled out for Saturday. Jamar Chase, we just mentioned. Week 17 is still TBD, but we'll be at week 16. Keenan Allen got ruled out earlier today, and Kenny Pickett's going to be out at least one more week. We mentioned Mason Rudolph will get in the start. Few players who practice in full, so they're off the injury report and will be full go. Tony Pollard, Jonathan Taylor, which is big news. He said that the Thursday practice report is going to tell us what he should expect on Sunday. So he's playing, and we're talking about Zach Moss later, who looks like he won't be playing. Josh Allen is good. Joe Flacco popped up the calf injury. Jerome Ford with the wrist injury has been dealing for a couple of weeks. Michael Pittman, this is huge concussion / that shoulder injury. I don't think he's officially been ruled out of concussion protocol, but the fact that he's full in practice is huge. Isaiah Pacheco is back. Travis Kelce with the neck, Rashee Rice with the hamstring, all playing. So now players who did not practice on Thursday, these are guys we have to pay attention to. CJ Stroud still with that concussion, looks like he's going to miss at least another week. Zach Moss, as I mentioned earlier, with that forearm. If Zach Moss isn't playing, Jonathan Taylor, of course you start him already, but he becomes an even better start if Zach Moss isn't there because he's not going to have him consistently taking over snaps. You do have Trey Sermon there, but I'd be more worried about Moss than Trey Sermon. Christian Watson with that hammy still not practicing. Alexander Madison with an ankle looks like he's going to be missing 2 weeks in a row. Ty Chandler's a really strong start this week. Smitty with the knee injury is interested. I don't know if he practiced on Wednesday. If he doesn't practice Friday, that's not a good sign, but I think he'll be back. I haven't really heard anything huge about that. Brian Robinson still dealing with a hamstring injury, will likely miss some time. Ramondre Stevenson still with his ankle, will likely miss another week. Trevor Lawrence, ankle/concussion. We got the news earlier today that looks like he's going to miss this week too. CJ Beathard would be the backup quarterback there. So all of the players take a hit. They got a good matchup this week, but unfortunately, backup quarterbacks, it's not going to be great. Hollywood Brown, heel injury, probably going to miss this week. Kenneth Walker just dealing with that shoulder still. I think it's more of a maintenance day than anything. He should be fine. Raheem Mostert just got some rest, and Aaron Rodgers activated to the active 53, but it did not practice. It will never play, but it's just going to be on the 53 and practicing because, like, yeah, why not, right? Okay, so now players who are limited, these guys were a bit more 50-50 on. AJ Dillon dealing with that thumb injury. Looks like he's going to be practicing. It feels like more of a pain tolerance thing than anything. You break your thumb. It feels like there's something he's got to be able to take hits from. Nico Collins with his calf trending towards playing. Tyreek Hill came back to practice as well as Achane. So both of those players look good for a big matchup against Dallas. It did feel like Tyreek Hill, he was 50-50 all week going up to that Jets game. But then you probably look at the matchup, and I know we might have called it a trap game, but McDaniel's like, Tyreek, we got this, bro. We'll come back against Dallas when we're going to need you. That's about it. Cole Kmet was limited, but he should be playing. Aaron Jones limited, but he should be playing. So those are basically all the injury news we have.
Huge news that Tyreek is going to be coming back, because in the first round of fantasy playoffs, Tyreek goes out there and says, "Nah, I can't go. I can't play against the Jets."
Yeah, that hurt.
That was a shock. I bet it did. But that's going to do it from us over here at the Fantasy Reaction episode 30. If you guys made it this far, we appreciate it. Drop a like on the video. It would help us out a ton. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that notification bell so you know when we go live like nights like tonight. We'll be back for... Will we be back on Sunday? I don't know. It is Christmas Eve.
Oh, it's Christmas.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're probably cooked. I'll be honest.
All right, I understand. I believe in celebrating the holidays, but we can't go without acknowledging this one. Jay Lito, you know who this is. Mr. Moran, he says, Mr. Dells, tell the world about how I'm cooking you in our fantasy playoffs. He's
talking shit.
You.
He's frying me. Nobody's
played
for
that
me.
70 points in day one's nuts.
He's had 3 players go.
And it was who? Was it Puka, Olave?
Kyron.
Oh, my God.
Puka, Kyron, Olave. Was it one more player? Hold up. Where's this league?
I think that was the trio.
Kyron, Puka, Olave. Yeah, 72. Not the greatest start. This team fell apart. Jamar Chase, Keenan Allen. Fucking
thank God, we
Mark
needed
Andrews.
That team was unbeatable for a while. Jesus Christ!
It's great.
Here I am sneaking my way back into the fantasy championship.
Gross.
I'm going up against Ryan Hammer. Shout out to our guy. I got to get past my matchup. I can't count my chickens before they hatch. I did that once and I got upset. So, but let's wrap up. Let's not get caught up into our fantasy matchups. That's gonna do it from us over here at Fantasy Reaction. We'll see you guys next time.